Welcome to the show.
Thanks, mate.
Very exciting. I've known you a long time.
Yeah.
You've been away for a while. You're back.
I have. I'm back.
Got a new business, which I actually don't know that much about. I did a little bit of research last night online, but I try not to look at too much because I want my sort of reactions to seem genuine.
Yeah.
So I actually don't know that much, but I did have a quick squiz at it.
I mean, yeah, our website is intentionally obfuscating what we do because it's a bit unique, and we sort of it's hard to get the pitch right between overselling online and then people not understanding it. It's a little bit.
Well, that's good. That means that this will be even more value to everyone because they finally get to hear it, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so you introduce yourself and your business because I think it's always better when you guys do that. Very quick snapshot, elevator pitch.
So ility is basically packaging, pricing and distribution for interactions between humans and buildings.
How's that ambiguous?
That's all we do. So yeah, literally, like, here's an interaction. Could be a lease, could be access, could be booking a meeting room, could be paying your bill, could be viewing your bill, could be parking, and basically these interactions are defined, by the outcome that you want, right? So you want to get somebody to view their legal contract, or you want them to view their ESG data. Could be another interaction. And there's a bunch of underlying systems to make these interactions work, which typically are pretty disparate. So to make the interaction work really well, you typically got to integrate somehow.
Yeah, makes sense.
We've taken a really different approach. So here's the defined interaction that you want. ility is literally a wrapper of code that says who can use it, how they can use it, where they can use it, and how much they pay. Okay. And so we wrap up every interaction in the same way, so that ultimately, instead of maybe doing the integration at in a horizontal way below, at the source of truth, we're actually like an extraction layer of data that, and I don't know how technical you want me to get, but basically we bring the data to another layer and then we have it all speaking the same nomenclature.
Okay. We'll get technical soon. There's a lot of technical people who watch this.
Yeah.
But let's, and it's commercial and residential?
Any asset class. So any real estate asset class. We're doing industrial, we're doing retail, we're doing residential, we're doing office.
Awesome. All right. Well, before we get too in depth, let's talk a little bit about you.
Sure.
So did you found this in the US?
Started in the US, started in New York.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So you obviously grew up here in Australia.
Yeah.
One, how did you end up there, and what was sort of the history that brought you to want to make and start this role? There's always something that says, right, I'm going to go and start a business. What was that for you, and how did that happen?
Yeah, so I mean, I worked in my family business for 25 years.
Yep.
And I left university, and I wasn't necessarily the world's greatest student, particularly not at school, maybe a little better at university. And then I really wanted to get into property. Property's always really interested me.
Yep.
And I definitely didn't want to go and work for the family business because we'll discuss a little bit later that, my old man is a very interesting character. Anyway, well, touching on him, I mean, he started a flexible workspace business. So like the equivalent of WeWork, he started that in 1978. So
long time ago.
Long time ago. Definitely the first in the world to do it at any sort of scale.
Yep.
There were a few little mum and pop operations of serviced offices in the US. But really, in terms of scale, he was the first to do it before Regis or RWG, and obviously long before WeWork. But basically, he built that business, across the whole of Asia, particularly around Australia and Asia. And at some point after I left university, I'd sort of got a bit of a technical skill. So I just found out I was pretty good with computers. I was never one of those like computer games kids or anything. Yeah, pretty good with tech. So my man's hopeless with tech, right? So he was like, listen, we're really screwed. And I need you to come and help, and you're pretty good at this stuff. So I actually went into Servcorp, the family business, as an IT technician.
There you go. Having sworn you wouldn't work there.
Having sworn I wouldn't work there. Well, I kind of thought, if I could get the IT thing working, he doesn't understand it enough to be painful. And that seemed to work for 25 years. So I ran the IT department. I rolled out a whole bunch of software. We started actually building some really good technology.
Yep.
And I got tired of getting so I had some technology skill, and then I just got tired of getting bullshitted by IT guys.
Yep.
So it's like when you take your car into the mechanic and he lifts the hood and he goes, "Oh, this is going to be expensive." and you got no freaking idea because I don't know how to put a car together. So exact same thing happens with IT, and like people are just suckers for it. So I decided not to be, and really taught myself then how to sort of beat the bullshit in that regard. So started building some stuff ourselves, and I built a pretty good automation platform in the ServCorp business. Now, ServCorp is really unique, right? And my man is a phenomenal operator, like amazing businessman, and like super hard ass. I mean, it's huge-ish. At its best, it's a $500 million, Aussie dollar company. It's a little bit low that right now, but it should be there. It should actually be more than that, but we can talk about that a bit later as well. Anyway, so then I became the Chief Information Officer of ServCorp, publicly listed company on the ASX. Built a lot of automation around collecting money that was falling through the cracks, and it proved that that sort of technology automation in a business like that can be the differentiator. So ServCorp is really unusual, not just because it's been around for nearly 50 years, but because it actually makes money. Yeah. Like it's freaking...
We don't get many people on the show that do that.
Very rare. So, that business post-COVID is turning over $300 million and throwing, a $40 million profit. And it's the only flexible workspace operation in the world, I think, and I'm pretty familiar with almost all of them, that actually makes any money.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. And a lot of that is to do with the automation platform that, I built and grew to drive the membership business and get a little bit, not get away from the rent arb, because the rent arb was getting tougher, right? And so, I basically moved to the US 6 years ago to work out why WeWork were blowing their doors off.
Was that 6 years ago?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And WeWork was still going strong then?
Still going strong,
God,
mate.
Things happened. Well, yeah, I know, but it had a little hiccup along the way, but...
Yeah. So, no, it's not still going. I mean, it's never actually gone strong. It looked like it was going strong for a while, but it's never actually gone strong.
Parties look good.
And look, part of the reason for that is they never built any automation. They never built any systems that actually collect the dollars that fall through the cracks. That if you're going to have a really complex service business that's intermingled with real estate, you need an awesome automation platform. Like that's what you need. That is essential. You can't run a complex service business because the service overhead kills it, right? The cost of people kills it.
Yeah. Okay.
And so unless you've got a lot of automation. So I moved there to work out why WeWork were blowing the doors off. I met Adam a couple of times, which was pretty awesome and pretty weird. I had the whole conversation with him about why they were losing money and he agreed. It was pretty interesting. So pretty quickly worked out that WeWork were going to go broke. I still think they will. Yeah. And then pretty quickly worked out that landlords were ready for flexibility and services and amenities, and pretty quickly realized that ServCorp had probably one of the best automation platforms for multi-tenant real estate.
Yep.
So I went to my old man. I'm like, look, these things are all facts, and we had sort of worked in our own streams for a very long period of time. And he just said, look, if you want to sell software, you should leave. And I was like, well, okay, that's not a good idea.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wasn't how you saw the conversation going at the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, I was a bit surprised, and I was a bit surprised that he sort of let it happen as well, right? Because it'd be much smarter to use this business that makes money, has, its multiple is 1 times revenue. Like it's really kind of crazy. So, if you had a technology platform that you were putting under landlords who at some stage in the future will become a threat to flexible workspace operators, if you were the operating system under those buildings, that's a super great thing to do, right?
It's sticky too, right?
It's sticky. I don't necessarily like the word sticky, but anyway,
you don't have to use. You can use your own word.
Yeah. It's like the least popular word in the world is moist. I don't like moist either. But anyway, moving on.
That went off.
Yeah. So apparently it is the world's most least popular word. Apparently, yeah.
Let's not say it again.
Yeah.
I wonder what that. Do you reckon sticky's second?
I don't know. I don't like it. Anyway. So basically, I left, and I put a lot of thought into, how do I do this? obviously I've got the skills to build an automation platform. Yep. But then I learned a lot through my ServCorp experience, and I built what I call like a monolithic platform, which is a big piece of software that integrated a lot of systems to automate a lot of business processes. Yep. And I never wanted to do that again. And a couple of reasons for that, right? Because if you're building a big monolithic platform, you are like signing yourself up for technical debt. So it's like you've got a whole bunch of APIs, you're integrating horizontally with system to system, and then you're trying to create outcomes. You're much better to sort of define your outcome and then get the data you need from the underlying systems, and then write a common language that will make that outcome work with other outcomes, right? Okay. So that's, and I'm getting a little technical again, but that's the way it went. So I had invested some time ago in a digital rights management company, right? So, and it revolved around digital rights management for brand assets.
Okay.
And so I knew a lot about that concept. And what really puzzled me when I left ServCorp, when I started looking around for building a really robust real estate framework for packaging, pricing, and distributing. Yep. In other words, automating these processes so that you didn't have a high service overhead. I realized that real estate as an industry didn't have a distribution framework. And when I looked at every other industry that had successfully digitized, they had a really robust distribution framework. And then there's other really great examples of it as well. But I'll talk about the digital rights management. So the digital rights management basically was a guy who invented this concept of digital rights management. And basically everybody was trying to crack, how do we distribute? Here's a digital asset. Everything's digital now. Yep. How do we build a business model around distributing that digital asset, right? And that digital asset was a song, or it was a video, or it was, it could even be like a travel record in a database somewhere, right?
Could be anything.
Could be anything. But real estate hasn't adopted this, which is kind of weird, right? So if you go right back to Sabre and Amadeus, which were systems that run travel.
I remember those.
Right? They were basically packaging, pricing, and distribution frameworks for seats in aeroplanes.
That's
right?
exactly what they are.
That's what they are. So that's one example. So I started going, this is pretty interesting. And you think about what exists in real estate for that. It doesn't really exist.
In fact, real estate is incredibly manual in every way. Whether it be property management, whether it be sales, whether it be tenant management, the whole thing. It's all very well, there's a lot of PropTech property management companies that have popped up because they've seen that, right? And they've all tried to pick a different piece of it.
But the thing is, there's a big difference between digitizing and then digital transformation, right? So we're talking about changing the entire way that the product is distributed. And this is where, so if you look at digital assets, so remember CDs had digital assets on them, but very analog distribution.
They did.
So 8 years ago, Microsoft was still printing their digital assets onto plastic discs and putting them in boxes and selling them in stores.
Yep.
Right? They were already in the cloud. They were one of the best software companies in the world.
But you had to buy them.
But their distribution mechanism was totally analog.
I never thought of that. That's mental.
It's mental, right? So it took a guy who invented digital rights management, third party, not Microsoft, to go, if you autonomously permission, so if you put a wrapper around that digital asset, because see, what everyone was trying to do was write code into the digital asset to protect it. But if you do that, it's very difficult to scale. So if you have a wrapper that's completely generic that goes around that digital asset, and that wrapper is the tool that distributes it, you can reuse that wrapper. You can do it at absolute scale, right? And the wrapper can be the same no matter what the asset is.
Yeah.
So the wrapper doesn't care whether it's a song, doesn't care whether it's a video, doesn't care what it is, right? So I looked at this in a lot of detail, and I got right into the patent of digital rights management, and I basically, thought about how every interaction between a human and a building is a right. Like you've got the right to access is just the right to enter the building, right? You've got the right to occupy, which is just a lease. Right? You've got the right to an IP address, which is just connecting to Wi-Fi. You've got the right to a parking spot, which is just how do you go in and park?
It's just permissions. It's all permissions.
It's literally all rights management. And so just, what do you have the right to consume? And then how do we manage that in a really, really, really ubiquitous and generic way? And you go back to so we invented and have patented this thing called physical rights management, which is basically how do you use a wrapper to distribute the interactions between humans and buildings?
Do you know what I love about these conversations is when people explain things, you listen to it and you start to listen. And then when you get to the end, you go, oh my God, it's so freaking obvious.
It's simple, man. It's super so simple. It's super simple. And everyone's doing things in silos. Everybody thinks you need to permission within the individual app. Everyone thinks you need to integrate horizontally, which is the dumbest thing in the world, like that you can do. Like, it is so dumb. Like, one database and another database carrying out tasks that they're supposed to do are not supposed to be integrated. And the difficulty comes, the reason you need the extraction layer and you need to create an autonomous, I love the word nomenclature. That's a great word.
That's a hell of a word. Can you spell it?
It's a great word. Probably not. But if you create that nomenclature outside of the database that's actually carrying out the task it's supposed to carry out, it's much, much easier to get things to work together.
And efficient, I would
imagine.
It's
so much more efficient. But also, humans are like typically pretty dumb in that, there'll be two databases. They might even be in the same software, right?
Yep.
So totally digitized using like an ERP system. But in one building, you might call it a suite, and in another building, you might call it an office. And in one building, you might call it a level, and in another building, you might call it a floor.
Yep.
Right? And so the complexity of integrating those things to each other
it's a nightmare.
It's a freaking nightmare, right? And it's really expensive. But the thing is that like people who are solving that problem from an integration point of view, the IT guys who lift the hood and go, that's going to be expensive. They love that. They're like, whoa.
They like it. The more expensive, the more complex, the better.
And the harder to understand, right?
Yep.
So what we do is we say, let's take all that data out, let's extract it, and then let's apply a common nomenclature across it. And it makes it so much easier to work. I do.
That makes an enormous amount of sense. And you started this 4 years ago, right? 4.5?
No, 3.5 years.
3.5 years ago. And so where's it at?
There's also been a pandemic.
I heard.
Yeah. There was this thing called COVID. Anyway, so great time to go and start my
perfect for lease property, anything to do with.
So it's a two-edged sword. So it's been good and bad, but we'll get to that in a second. It was basically this idea I had about rights management was sort of like a light bulb moment.
Yep.
And then I'm like, no, it's too simple. It's like, surely this is going to break. Like, it doesn't work. So I went off and I'm just like, think of examples. And then, I met my CTO and he's like, this is amazing. And he'd worked in rights management in advertising for real estate on web pages for digital advertising, right? So he had some concept of that and he's like, this is really, really good. This is good. So we tested it out. I started just sort of evangelizing and talking to some landlords and they're like, look, this is so necessary. They didn't understand the rights management piece. I didn't talk about it much because I wasn't sure. And then, we were a PowerPoint presentation for the first 6 months, just sort of testing whether the idea worked. And then we basically spent nearly a year building it. So I raised some money from family and friends.
Yep.
And we got a prototype built, which was a non-functioning, it was supposed to be a functioning prototype for the money, but in classic design agency form.
It's going to be expensive.
In classic design agency form, you're like, oh, yeah, the whole back end will work. You'll be able to use the code again. And surely, no, it was just all hard-coded and it was a bloody nightmare. But anyway, so we spent $350,000 building a prototype, and that got a couple of landlords really interested. They could start to see how it might bring things together into one place so that they could operate. And then towards the end of 19, I managed to land 3 pilots.
Okay.
So these are free pilots. So we raised $2 million from family and friends.
Yep.
And then we basically had planned, and we spent almost all of that just building the product.
Yep.
And that included the $350,000 for the prototype and, just the cost to run for a while with zero income.
Right.
We decided that we would do 3 free pilots for big landlords that had big footprints so we could get as much square footage as possible. Yep. And yes, we do every asset class, like rights management works in all of them. It's totally generic. But I had a lot of relationships in commercial space. I understood that space really well. I understood where the pain points were, and I could see this change happening into more flexible space. So it was a good place to start. So we signed, we got 3 pilots, one with Blackstone, which was good, like in their one of their property businesses called EQ. We got a pilot with a group in Australia called Centuria from New York. And then we got a pilot with Legal & General, who are, the biggest landlord in the UK. So, I guess. And so that was pretty exciting. So we worked at getting those deployed between sort of November and April.
3 pilots in 3 different countries.
Yeah.
Just before a pandemic, right?
Yeah. So that was pretty interesting. Well, look, it's a cloud product. It can be deployed pretty much anywhere. It doesn't need a lot of boots on the ground to be deployed. Our aim is to keep things really simple. So quick deployment, doesn't take a lot of work. It's a low code, no code platform. We do about 80-20 in terms of custom. It was probably 50-50 to start, right? Because you don't have everything built. Now it's like easily 80-20 in terms of what you can buy off the shelf from us and then do 20% custom. And the thing that was really big at the time was tenant engagement. Mm-hmm. So everyone was buying tenant engagement. I think tenant engagement on the whole as a SaaS product is mostly a thin veneer of software shit that landlords have to tick the box.
Something that you can just log into, right? And that's it, really.
I mean, it's literally to say, oh, we're a landlord and we care about our tenants, so we're going to tick this box.
I laugh because I've rented lots of offices and I know exactly what you mean.
There's no engagement. Nobody uses them because you cannot do tenant engagement as a SaaS platform, right? You need to deliver specific things to specific stakeholders in specific buildings, and it needs to be completely composable or modular. We'll talk about composability.
It needs to be engaging.
It needs to be engaged, but to get it engaging, it has to be specific, right?
Yeah, right.
And you can't be specific if you're SaaS. You can you can engage people with events and things like that, and there's a real need for that, for there to be that level of service. But in terms of the software that's behind that, people don't care about a building app. They don't care.
No,
they literally.
I've got one at the moment. I don't use it.
No.
I don't even know the login. Actually, I've got it on the phone.
Literally, if they had some really useful stuff that was useful to you as a tenant, then you would use it, right? Probably. And there's certain components of like digital access and ESG data and billing and amenities booking that could be useful to you. But then it's got to also be really frictionless.
I only use the digital access. That's it. I don't use anything else on it.
So we'll come back to that in a second, right? So we built these 3 pilots.
Yep.
And all 3 went pilot to paid, which is awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So 100% conversion rate into paid. So we're really onto something here.
Big customers too.
Big customers. So then, and then L&G, so in the middle of all that, so we're in the middle of building pilots that are like free, and it doesn't matter whether they work or they don't, and there's no sort of urgency because nobody's really pushing you because they haven't spent any money, so they're not like it was pretty slow going there for a while. And then a company called RXR, the 3rd biggest landlord in New York, came storming through the door and said, "We heard your tech is great. We want to deploy this across our whole portfolio because everybody's coming back to work on Memorial Day, and we're going to, we're going to be ready, and we're going to have this brand new experience, and we're going to use rights management to drive it."
So you had urgency suddenly.
It was like 20 million square feet. Seriously. And they want and they're like, "We will only do it if you can deploy it in 5 weeks."
Good job, it's no code.
So literally right through the middle of COVID. And I was firing everybody because I'm like, this is going to be a disaster.
Yep.
Like the wheels are falling off. I'm like trying to make sure our pilots are keeping going, but nobody's started going into the office, right? And then mate, these guys came in and they're like, boom, let's do this.
Wow.
And
how good?
It was pretty good, mate. So we needed to raise a bit of money to make this all happen. Yep. So off the back of that, we raised $4 million from 2 investors. One, an institutional investor who is super savvy and really one of the best investors, I think, in PropTech.
Yep.
And called Greenpoint. A guy called Chris Green who used to run property at Macquarie, and then the Safra family, just as like a punt because they like me and they like the presentation, put a couple of $1 million in. And so we raised $4 million from what I would call the seed round.
Yep.
And that gave us enough money to complete the free pilots and build for RXR. And then RXR started paying as well. So it started rolling.
So you still got that 100% hit rate?
Still got 100% hit rate.
That's awesome.
Pretty good.
It's unusual.
It's unusual.
It's very unusual.
I mean, it's a really big, long, hard sale, and so
I imagine that size customer as well.
To churn it, right? And then they all went from pilot to paid, but they don't all land and expand, right? So EQ has been like a bit like pulling teeth, and they pilot everybody, and it's big getting your toe in the water in someone like Blackstone. So that hasn't been as good. But L&G then went absolutely nuts, right? So L&G, we did 1 building with them, then we went to 3 buildings, then we went to like 35 buildings, and now we're in 650 buildings.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
And the data you must be getting from that as well.
It's a little bit to cope with. So they're still working out what to do with it.
Yep.
But the amazing thing is when you have this wrapper that says, like, what do you need from data, right? You want to know who used it, how they used it, where they used it, and whether they paid for it.
Yep, you've got that.
Like, that's all, and it's all generic, right? So it's all exactly the same.
That's amazing,
and so that's really, really useful stuff. So then we've just started expanding with Centuria as well. So they're, and then we're also doing some work with Lendlease now. So that's pretty exciting.
So what brought you back? I mean, was it just wanting to come home more than anything, or?
Look, it's I never intended, like, we had a tipping point where we thought we might stay in the US, and originally we were only going to go there for a year, and then the whole sort of Surf Corp thing happened.
Yep.
And I won't say I got trapped there. Like, it was great to be there, but it was a little bit. Like, there was a lot of, I'm starting a new business. I'm in the center of, like, raising capital. I'm in the center of PropTech for the world. And I'm in the center of like where most of the property companies, even if they're not necessarily American, have either a big presence or their head office.
Yep.
Like the seat of power in someone like Brookfield is in New York.
Yep.
Even though they're a Canadian business, right? But so yeah, it was just a really good place to be to start this PropTech business, and I had really good connections. So I know a lot of people in the industry, in the property industry, and I'm pretty likable. So
yeah, well, we'll wait to see the comments in the
Anyway, so and I throw good parties, right?
You do throw good parties. Yeah. I can attest to that.
Yeah, so that helps. Anyway, so we were there for I've got 3 kids. I got a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 9-year-old boy. And these are the reasons I moved home in order of importance. Number one, my mum's 81, and I want to spend more time with her. And my brother had been telling me about that. My brother also works with me. He left the family business as well and works with me. And he's like, you got to come and spend some more time at home. So that was a big consideration. I miss Asia. So we spent a lot of time in Asia, and my wife is half Thai, and her family are in Thailand, and her dad's not well. So there's sort of a family reason for us to be closer to home and closer to Asia. And then look, there's a massive opportunity for this business in Asia. And I think there's going to be more growth. I think there's more opportunity for newer developments in Asia than there is in the US.
Yeah.
And I think that the repositioning of real estate from being an asset management business to more of a service and hospitality business, whether that's rejigging properties so that they're more mixed use, or whether there's a hospitality and service layer. Just presents a great opportunity for ility, right? And a lot of that's been driven by COVID, which is why I said it's a two-edged sword. Like, nobody was making any decisions, but and it was hard working through the pandemic. But at the same time, it's a driver for a lot of change in this space.
It is. Well, every space.
And ility isn't a platform, a monolithic platform.
No, it's not.
With a bunch of features. It's a framework that you can use to compose your own platform that's completely modular, right? So it builds responsiveness, which is what everybody should be focusing on.
It's insanely scalable.
It's very, very, very scalable.
I mean, that's the biggest.
Yeah.
So how was it during COVID? I just got to touch on it because you're building a PropTech.
Yeah.
And the world's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
What was I mean, you said you had that moment where you're beginning to get rid of people, and along comes this client. But what was that like? A lot of people are interested in this. What was that like? That moment when you've left your family business, you started PropTech, bang, world changed.
I mean, my first thought was, this is, it was doom.
Yeah.
Right. First thought was,
I would imagine doom is a good word, actually.
Doom and gloom. And I really thought there was going to be a much bigger impact on commercial real estate in particular, which is where we had decided to deploy, because that's where I had my experience.
Yep.
I thought it was going to be much doomier and gloomier than it has been. I didn't think that we had enough penetration. Like, I didn't think that we had deployed enough to be at that point where people would start using us as a responsive tool to the new reality.
Yep.
And so I thought maybe, we'd missed the boat, like it was a bit late.
By 6 months or something.
But, just, when you're a founder, you just have so much doubt in yourself, in the idea, in your business, in your ability to manage your cash flow.
Yep.
Like, it's
never goes, does it?
It never goes.
It's something we talk a lot about on this show, is that we've had some people who've built some phenomenal businesses that they've sold for hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And right up until the day the money hits their account, they think they've stuffed it up.
Yeah.
They're pretty sure whatever they did in that last meeting, fucked it all up. That's it. I've done it. I've done it again.
Yep.
I find it fascinating. I mean, and I have it constantly. It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why do people do it? It's ridiculous.
Look, emotionally and from a family point of view, it's been harder than I could have imagined.
Yeah.
But I think we've made the right decision to come home. I think I've got better support frameworks here as well.
Yep.
I think that it's possible to do it from anywhere now, and COVID's kind of proven that. And when I look at both the vicarious meetings and the ability to get in front of decision makers in New York, I don't need to be there all the time. Like, I need to be there for a month a year. So I'm basically going back quarterly for a week at a time, or 10 days at a time, and then stopping into the UK because L&G are my biggest customer. And so that's what I'm doing.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. All right. So where now? So you've achieved a hell of a lot in an industry that's probably been one of the hardest hit industries.
Yeah.
So you're in a great position now.
Yeah.
Both from a business point of view and by the sounds of it, from a personal point of view.
Yeah.
What's next?
Yeah. Look, we've still got a little way to go. So we're not making money.
No.
I'm still not paying myself.
No.
So it's hard, right? And it's hard going from being the COO of a publicly listed company, albeit the family business, a very successful business, to founder of a startup. So from here to zero, it's hard, right? And that sort of takes its toll. And I don't want to pay myself until we're making money. But then there's this, you got to invest in building the pipeline, because the pipeline's a really long, it's a hard pipeline.
Yep.
And I'm the sales force right now. So we're still working on that. And what we've done is we've absolutely proven the technology, right?
Yeah.
Like our biggest advocates in the industry, in the market, are our customers.
Of course.
Which is pretty bloody awesome.
It's amazing.
Right? And our investor from the seed round is leading our next round, right? So
that's
and our customers want to invest in us as well. So there's a lot of positive signal points. And then, we're working with Deloitte. So we're working with them. We've signed an alliance agreement with them.
Cool.
So they really believe in rights management as a tool for the digital transformation in real estate.
Yep.
And so they're introducing us as part of their array of solutions that they can use with their consulting business. So that's sort of the next step, right? So I just used personal relationships to build as big a square footage coverage or square meterage coverage as we possibly could. Now, those customers love the product, can really see the potential of it. So we're landing and expanding with them. Next stage is we've got our first big multifamily starts. So we're deploying it in multifamily. So using rights management to not just manage, leasing and churn and all of those things, but cable and Wi-Fi and insurance and moving and parking and even...
This will be a good test of how easy it is to scale it, right? This will be a real proper proved case. This is it. You can do what you like with this.
So yeah, absolutely. So that's really the next step. And in that, we're sort of doing a little weird raise right now, which is we're calling our Series A, but it's a pretty crappy market to raise money, and it's so I'm keeping it really small.
Yep.
And then, at the end of next year, our ARR gets to about $5 million, which is double where it is now. But that's all line of sight. So it's not like I've got to go and hit the road and sign up people.
That's coming regardless.
If we do a good job, it's going to come regardless. So, once we hit that point, then raising's a lot easier. So then it's, and then the choice is, and we'll be profitable. So the choice is, do we just chug along the way we're going and keep it profitable? My view is, there's a lot more we can do to get scale and credibility. So whether it's getting certified, doing like SOC and those sorts of things, SOC compliance or those sorts of things. We're already totally GDPR compliant and California privacy compliant. So we don't store any customer data. But then going that extra step could be a lot easier, but it can get a bit expensive, right?
Well, we had a guy on the show maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago who's got a compliance company that has taken SOC compliance from 8 months to 8 weeks.
Wow.
So I should probably introduce you to him.
We should chat.
And he just got a shit ton of money because everybody wants that service. And it's interesting you talk about funding. We had the Sunrise conference last week, and it was a great event, which Blackbird run, but I had ended up having dinner on the first night with about 8 or 9 VCs, and was just chatting to them about the whole fundraising. There's a lot of money there. And there's a lot of money in the US, and there's a lot of money in the US. The UK seems to be where it's getting deployed easy, but it is a funny time. I think no one really knows what to do. They've got the money pledged to deploy, but they don't want to deploy. They don't know how to deploy it. They're not sure who they should deploy it to. It's a weird time.
I think the risk decision is become harder to make, right?
Absolutely, much harder.
And so what we've seen is we've spoken to a ton of VCs, but the sweet spot in terms of check size and we want less investments and we want the check size to be bigger. So check size has gone up. And then therefore, we've sort of got to get to that next step. So when you say what's next, it's like, we've got to get to that next step. We might need a little bit of capital to do that. And, I could probably push it through, and that would be just make it work, which I'm a little bit unusual in terms of being a founder. I'm not like 25 and quit my job to do this. It's a bit different. I'm very old. But
I think you're younger than me. Anyway, let's not get into that.
I don't think I'm younger than you.
Let's not discuss this on the show. Look, I think although there's stats that say founders over 40, make up 50% of founders these days. And they also are far more successful. So, I think the old view is gone. But the money thing, I think the fact that you've got a route to profitability is one of the rarest things, and it's one of the things everybody is looking for. They want to know that people actually know how to run a business, and that's probably why the more mature founders, because they often have run businesses, are probably looking more attractive right now.
Yeah, I mean, I had it drilled into me by my old man. He has no debt, he's got a lot of cash in the bank, and he runs the whole business on the bank balance. It's just, is cash going up or is cash going down? That's the only thing that matters.
Wow.
So
it's a good grounding.
It's a great grounding.
Yeah.
It's a great grounding. They've got some PTSD, but aside from that, I'm okay.
All right. Last question.
Yeah, shoot.
You're going to grow. There's no question. Why would someone want to come and work with you guys? What's in your, it's always good to hear it from the founder. What would you say to someone if they were sitting in front of you?
I think that, we're a unique proposition. So, no, but I mean, as a product, we're not going into a highly competitive marketplace for exactly what we do. Yes, we compete at certain points with various providers of software.
But there's no single competitor, right?
But there isn't really a single competitor, right? So I think that's quite compelling. We've got a really amazing culture. So my CTO has been with me from the start. My head of product's been with me from the start. My PA's been with me from the start. In fact, our churn has been incredibly low. And so I think that there's, the team really feel like we're making a difference, doing something awesome. And, we try to keep it fun. So, I came from a, very hierarchical business, that had, very strict guidelines. And I think that, the way to do business has changed to some degree. I think that provided, people are measured on productivity and on, and on positivity, then they, and on the outcomes they produce, then it doesn't matter where they work or how they work or who they are. And that's our approach.
I like I very much agree on the productivity and the way that people work. I run my business the same, but productivity and positivity is you should coin that, trademark it. That's an awesome combination. I've not heard anyone say that before.
It's a great combo.
We're going to use that again.
So I honestly believe, I am no hippie, but I am a big believer in the power of positivity and manifesting outcomes.
Yep. Fantastic. Marcus, thank you so much for coming on the show. And I can attest to the fun side. I have no doubt. I've seen more of that side than I have of your work side. I can certainly guarantee that happens.
Yeah, we keep it fun.
We do, I'll bet. Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on.
My pleasure.
And we'll get you back on in a few years and see how it's going.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thanks, man.